Asking only workman's way.
And there we go. This is the third instalment of the Minds Matter mental health radio series, and we're with another mental health professional. This time it's Fiona Grant.
Hi there.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm the mental health nurse for the university staff and student community. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Pleasure. And we're also here with Ailey Ranking, President of the University of Dundee Mental Health Society.
Hi, good morning.
Do you count yourself as President, or are you more democratic?
I'm more democratic, I think.
Nice. It's good to hear.
The role's just a title. Yeah, we all work together in it, so yeah.
And so we're just really at the start of our mental health campaign, really, although we want to make sure that everyone knows that it's going on all the time, and the services that we signpost are exactly what Fiona works with. So would you like to give us a kind of taste of the things that come to your door and the students?
Right. In terms of the mental health side, obviously we have a general health side as well, which is really important. But the mental health side, actually get a sprinkle of everything, really. People come because they're referred, obviously by their GP. That's actually how most people get to me, or by our own doctor, by community mental health teams, etc. But some people just come in because they know it's a health service and they don't know where else to go, or they can't access, NHS services because they don't know how to do that, don't know how to negotiate it. So we help them to do that as well. The types of things, problems that people come with, obviously depression and anxiety are probably the most common. That's what I deal with kind of most often, but it could be from the whole spectrum. So people with eating disorders, first presentation psychosis, that means it's never happened to them before, bipolar, the whole range, really.
Wow.
Interesting.
Indiscriminate amongst the student body.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Mental illness doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
Mental health difficulties don't discriminate.
Mm-hmm. We were hearing that from Mike Ramsey in our last interview, the last Saturday just there.
Yes.
So he was exactly saying the exact same thing in his own experience as well. It's not discriminatory.
It is. Yes, it could be any one of us at any time.
Definitely. So I was wanting to just ask you a few things first off about how you got into mental health, how you got into mental health nursing. So if you could just give us a brief outline of your career.
By accident, really, if I'm honest. I originally had wanted to go into social work, but at that time, many moons ago, it was you had to be 21, and obviously I was 18. So I thought I'll go into something that would be a good stepping stone to social work. So I thought, mental health nursing, I had a lot of nurses in my family, so I duly undertook the training and then stuck with it, really liked it, and stuck with it. So yes, did my training, then worked in inpatient services in different, as you did at the time, in different areas so that you got experience. And then I moved to community services, working with community mental health teams with generic caseload as it was at the time. And then day units, I went and managed day units, back to the community mental health teams. And then I came here in 2001, which was quite a change, quite a big change.
I can imagine, yeah.
It was good.
Good. Is there any case, and we asked this of Mike Ramsey last week as well, so is there any case or story, so to speak, that has stayed with you and that keeps you doing what you do, so to speak?
Gosh, I don't know how Mike felt, but that's such a big question.
Yeah, he gave two because I think he couldn't decide.
It's so difficult because you meet so many people, each with their own individual experience and story and recovery, that it's quite difficult to come up with individuals. I suppose, thinking about coming here today, I was thinking quite a lot about student experience, given that where we're sitting at the moment, and I'm thinking, people touch you all the time for different reasons. I'm thinking of a young student quite a number of years ago, and that was chosen deliberately because I don't want it to be recognisable at all, but who presented, and it was his mother that had actually phoned first she was really worried about him, but he wouldn't go to his GP, and she gave me lots of symptoms, and I was quite worried about him too. So we invited him in, and he could have said no thanks very much, and that would have been another challenge. But anyway, he came in, a really nice lad, and it transpired he had a very prominent psychosis, but it wasn't obvious. It was obvious to me or anybody who looked for it, but you wouldn't have known just by sitting beside him in class or whatever. And the guy, it's often really, really frightening, really terrifying to the individual. All this stuff's going on that he thought he was being followed and monitored by secret services, and there were all these signs that was happening because cars would drop beside him and lights and things like that. And when you can work with someone like that and get them into the services to get the help that they really need, which sometimes can be challenging, especially if if they're not really realising what's going on. When you can do that and see somebody recover from what's been such a frightening experience that's gone on for quite a long time, and he starts to re-engage with people and re-engage with his family and rebuild his relationships and his career, that means a lot. That's really worthwhile. It's really worthwhile doing that.
Can you even explain to the listeners, possibly in case they don't know, what psychosis exactly is? Because I think folk generally have an idea, but it's often
misunderstood.
Yes, definitely. Sometimes. Misunderstood is the word.
So a psychosis is when a true psychosis, when people don't have insight into what's happening to them, so they're having lots of experiences that appear to be absolutely real to them at the time, and they may often have perceptual disturbance. They might be seeing things, hearing things, can be any of the 5 senses, so you might have sensations that something's on your skin, or you're tasting things, or whatever. It can be any of the senses, which again can be frightening and disturbing, very unpleasant, and may have delusional thoughts. And a delusion is where you have a thought that is out of keeping with your background and experience, but you believe it is absolutely real at the time. And it's worth getting across to people. You can't persuade someone that's not at that point in time for such a psychosis. You can't persuade someone out of that. So if I tried to say to you, you're not sitting here doing this radio interview with me today, what would happen? You would argue with me, and if I kept arguing with you, what would eventually happen, do you think? Put you on the spot.
I'd probably want to leave.
Yeah. And you would just, I would just have discredited myself. There wouldn't be any relationship. So that's how real it can be for people. So you've got to respect that.
Yeah.
That's the reality at that time.
Do you think, you've just touched on how maybe, we for their reality at the time, it's there, and we can't just shake them out of it, so to speak. Do you think it's because it's not visible that's the frustration for people that are, for some people that don't understand, maybe, in a sense?
Yeah.
Like with a physical illness, you can see the symptoms, so to speak.
Yes, I think that is an issue, and I think particularly with something like psychosis, but you could say the same for other mental health difficulties. Sometimes people haven't experienced it, especially with something as difficult as psychosis and distressing. It can be hard to imagine that altered reality, unless you've used substances or whatever, and you may have had some experience of perceptual disturbance, etc., that's been induced by cannabis or whatever you've been using. Then you may have a bit more understanding. But I think because we can't see it, sometimes it's difficult to understand, and you can see that.
Do you come across students presenting mental health symptoms because of either drug or alcohol abuse, would you say?
Yes. I mean,
is it quite often, or is it just...
It's very difficult to be definite, because how do you know it's one thing and not the other?
Yeah.
So we have to be really, really careful. But I think research supports the fact that, cannabis use, for example, is not the same as cannabis use maybe used to be a long time ago. It's not necessarily the benign drug that we all think it is, or people used to think it was anyway. And there are more and more people, particularly if they've used it a lot or used it very young, who are experiencing psychotic episodes, which potentially could lead on to a more severe illness. Sometimes just a one-off, but it does worry me. And we're dealing with a predominantly young population, and I do see a lot of people who regularly use cannabis, and or other substances indeed, but who perhaps don't realise the risks that go along with that. It's not to say that everyone who uses cannabis or substances will have a problem, because that would be untrue to say, but it does raise the risks. So yeah, we do do see people who we suspect, we have no acid test, have perhaps suffered as a consequence.
Now, just before we go to our first song, I was keen to ask, have you seen an increase in kind of students coming forward in both the breaking down of the stigma, but also potentially more use of drugs on campus?
I think there are maybe two questions here, but the stigma one, I think, from my experiences, working, because I've been here for coming up for 15 years, I think there is a reduction in stigma. Overall, I think it would be, and these are my opinions from my experience, I think it would be true to say that there are certain disciplines for who that's less the case. I think stigma is still bigger in some areas than others, and I'm not going to name them.
By that you mean like subject courses?
Yeah. But I think overall, younger people are, from my experience, becoming less reticent to come forward, and I'm just generalising, obviously. And the other part of your question, I've forgotten because I'm getting old.
Would you say that there was kind of an increase in drug use, or it's
hard to
say
say.
This, yeah.
It's hard. I wouldn't have that data, to be honest. Probably ad hoc from my own experiences. Probably I would be inclined to say yes, but if I'm absolutely honest, I don't have that data to really support.
No, that's
so it'd be
absolutely
more
fine.
an opinion rather than fact based.
So we're kind of treating this as a kind of desert island discs.
Sure.
So we also asked you to pick some songs.
Yeah.
What's your first song?
Pixie Lot, and it's all about tonight.
Fantastic. Here we go.
I bought a new pair of shoes. I got a new attitude when I walk, 'cause I'm so over you. And it's all about tonight. I'm going out with the girls, ready to show all the boys what I got. I'm letting go of the hurt, 'cause it's all about tonight. Yeah, the night is alive, you can feel the heartbeat. Let's just go with the flow, we've been working all week. Tomorrow doesn't matter when you're moving your feet. It's all about tonight. Yeah, we'll be
Pixie Lot all about tonight. Why did you pick that song?
Well, I have to say I had quite a struggle just narrowing it down to 5 songs. That's good. I think again, that's when you get to my age and you have so many songs. However, it always makes me feel quite good listening to that. I think it's just the music, the melody. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's all about now. And if you're wanting to tie that to mental health, well, it is kind of all about now.
Yeah.
Let's focus on now and here on in, and I think it kind of does that. It's just a moment in time, so I quite liked it.
Fantastic. Right. I'd like to move on a wee bit to the health services and your role within it, and people coming to use it, so to speak. So I'd first like to just maybe ask, to clarify, what exactly is your role within the health services? So yes, you're the mental health nurse, but do you work with other professionals to help a student, or what exactly is it?
So as I said, most of my referrals actually come from GPs, or other health professionals. And it's important that someone that's coming to see me has been seen by their own GP or our doctor or another health professional, and that's just to make sure that it's appropriate and they're getting the proper treatment for the presentation. There could be a physical health issue that is manifesting as a mental health issue, so it's really important that people are being treated properly. So that's why we don't really see people just coming straight in to the service, although that would be nice. It wouldn't actually be appropriate. So when I get referrals, what we'll do is a mental state assessment, a full kind of biopsychosocial assessment, if that means anything to you. It looks at all the different areas of their life to try and understand and map out what's happening, and what's working well as well as what's not working well, and that way we've got an idea what resources we've got to deal with the issues that are presenting. We would then, and it's all collaborative, so there's no secret stuff. If I'm writing it down, then we're discussing it. And then the whole thing is about identifying specific goals and specific actions to work towards those goals, and what are you doing and what am I doing towards this plan, and we'll have a date to review it, etc, etc. So it's about change, it's about moving forward. Yes, I liaise with GPs and any other relevant health professionals. I'm obliged to do that. So that would be psychiatry or psychology, etc, but mostly it's GPs. And that's to make sure that someone gets a joined up care plan. Because it's important. GPs making decisions about someone's care, they need to know what else is happening. If I think that someone needs long-term or very intensive input, multidisciplinary input, and I can't give those things, then I will go back to the GP and look at referral on to the community mental health teams, or indeed if it's immediately urgent, then I would deal with that straight away.
Has this role changed throughout when you first began it to the present day?
It's quite interesting. It was a new role at that time.
Oh right.
So it was a great job to come in with a blank sheet, and in fact there weren't any other universities employing their own mental health nurse at that time. In fact, I don't think there are now either. So
Dundee's the only one that does it, isn't it?
That I know of, So well done to them, really.
Definitely.
So I had a blank sheet, but yes, I think it has changed. I try and fill the gap or respond to where there are delays in the NHS release. So as their priorities have changed, so have mine, because I always, there's no point in me trying to replicate what they do. But if I can augment that, if I can fill the gaps, connect people where they're not connecting otherwise, then I feel that that's a worthy kind of use of my time. And also do a lot more training and things with staff, etc, and some student groups than we used to do as well.
Okay. What type of student groups do you hold?
Well, just whoever invites us, really.
Is it like the Beat event that was on recently?
Like the Beat event, with the young ambassadors who came along and spoke about their personal experiences of eating disorders, which, you were there, really. It was quite a powerful...
It was. It was, to the listeners that don't know, it was a event that happened a couple of weeks back. So as Fiona said, it was with young ambassadors from an organisation about for eating disorders. 2 girls came along to share their experiences with their eating disorder, and as you said, very powerful stuff. So
but myself and Jean Jarvis, who's the disability officer that deals with mental health difficulties, often do more kind of presentation type trainings, and try and keep that quite interactive with staff, and also with the student support officers and peer connectors. We have an input to their training, but we'll have other sessions. So we were invited along by the law student peer support. You know, they support other students, and also the psychology group have invited us in the last couple of years to do that as well. So to help them to be supporting the mentors, the mentor groups. So really just who invites us along, and we go along and have a session. But I mean, the feedback's been good, and we like getting out and doing that sort of thing, because we believe that we shouldn't just be mopping everything up. We should be doing a lot of preventative stuff and keeping people well, and that was the ideal scenario.
Exactly.
Definitely. So we welcome that.
That's often a very hard thing, because obviously the student body changes every year. What do you find have been the kind of best ways to get the message out there and prevent? Is it come from the office, or is it came from the students, or a mix of both?
I think it's a mix of both. It's just really evolved over time, but you hit on a really good point in that we are often reliant on yourselves, etc., to really tap into ways of communication that are meaningful and engaging to young people, and that changes over time. And I'll be the first to hold my hand up and say I'm not actually very good at all that kind of stuff. The communications, etc. And I think that's because we just have our head down doing what we're doing, and that kind of takes up all our energies. So the more that we can work with yourselves and student groups, etc., the better. But I do have a really strong belief in we should be looking at the community as a whole. I don't believe we should just be looking at students or just at staff. I think we should be looking at everybody's mental health, because each of us lives and works in the same environment and impact on one another. So if our staff aren't healthy and well, what kind of service can they deliver to our students?
Exactly.
So if we want to be a successful organisation, we have to really focus on the whole, the whole community really as a system.
Definitely. Can I ask as well, you've already touched on it already, in that people get referred by their GP, but I think speaking to students as part of our own society, a lot of folk maybe don't understand maybe what technically quote qualifies them, so to speak, to seek these services, be it the counselling, be it health service. So for the health service, what, so to speak, qualifies them to seek help?
To seek help? Well, I mean, I would be saying if people are having symptoms, if they're noticing a change and things are getting more difficult for them, and that goes on for quite some time, more than a couple of weeks, because we all have ups and downs, then I think they should be going having a chat with their GP in the first instance. If they don't have a GP, then come and see us and we'll try and negotiate that with them. Have a chat with their GP whether or not they've had previous difficulties that are the same. And I think sometimes when they've had previous difficulties, in some ways that can be an advantage, because they've got previous experience, they know what to look for, they perhaps know what to do and avoid the pitfalls, etc. If they haven't, sometimes it sneaks up, and we don't pay attention to it, and we kind of think, oh well, it'll get better on its own, or people isolate themselves, etc. So that's the last thing we want, is people to isolate themselves. So I would be saying, go and have a chat with your GP. If you don't have a GP, come and see us, and we'll try and help you the best way that we can with that, depending on your individual circumstances. So don't ignore it. You know yourself. People know themselves, and when it starts to deviate too much, then it's time to do something about that. Having said that, there are things that when you first notice it might make a difference. So they're the same things that keep us well in the first place, and they are eating well, pay a bit more attention to your diet, making sure you've had enough fluids, making sure you're not burning the candle at both ends, get a bit of work, rest and play. All sounds pretty familiar stuff, and it's not that sexy, it's not that wow, isn't that fascinating? But actually, and I don't know what Mike and was it Tom, your other guys had said, but if you ask psychiatric professionals, what we will say, mental health professionals, is these are really important things. These make a difference, because it's about your function, your chemistry, your blood chemistry, etc. And if you keep all those things well looked after, then doing the rest is much easier.
That's So the whole of the next 2 weeks we have events like aimed towards this, so
Right.
that people can come and unwind and just take time off. But also we
Fabulous.
have free sports on campus, free pool access, free gym access.
Which is
Free
wonderful.
yoga.
Free
the
yoga.
the Mental Health Society is going as a group with other members and various other folk to go to the yoga on Thursday. So if anyone still wants to join us at 4:15, you're more than welcome.
Absolutely. You can't underestimate these
Yeah.
things, although I think in modern society, I think we do underestimate these things.
We
And
do,
I
yeah.
think, society has changed so much that everything's done in a hurry and everything's convenience, and sometimes all these basics get squeezed out because we don't realise until we've squeezed them out what difference they make.
No, it's even the transition from university. I remember even talking to you about that one time where when you first go to university, it's that moment of freedom, so you think, yes, I can eat what I like and I can basically do it, I can get up when I like, but it really, like, if you do that for a whole month or even 2 weeks, it can knock you for 6, because you get out of your routine that you had at home.
Sure.
And you start to eat, I don't know, macaroni cheese on toast and just,
Right.
stop eating vegetables, and it does affect your mood. It really,
does.
and
And sometimes, often when I see people, well, quite often when I see people, there is a definite element of those things have been neglected, or squeezed out, or whatever. And when I speak to people about it, as I do every single person I see, very often they just hadn't realised. It wasn't deliberate, it wasn't, they just hadn't realised, and they're so busy working and focusing that, they get a pizza at 10 o'clock at night or whatever, and that's it until 10 o'clock tomorrow night. So, think what's happening with your blood sugar in that time, and how can your brain perform? How can you, be working at your best when you're living like that? So
If you take anything from it, I know that the major philosophers, they all took walks every half an hour, and almost all of them ate like 3 solid meals a day.
yeah.
So
And the thing I say to people is, it doesn't have to be perfect, because I think that puts people off. They think when you speak about eating properly, that they have some image of that means I have to have like proper home cooked meals that is made from scratch 3 times a day, and then fruit in between, and and that would be great, but many people don't have time for that. So it's like, make it easy, think about the things you do like and you don't like, and build your options around that. It can be really easy, it can be cheap. How long does it take to throw a baked potato in the microwave and open a tub of coleslaw? Do you know those? So think about things, and your listeners might be saying, well, I don't like coleslaw. That's fine. Think about what you do like. And so when I look at that with people, I get them to build it around that and make it easy. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just try and eat several times a day and keep your blood sugar up. How many people don't like breakfast? I don't know if you heard the report on the radio this morning. Did you hear the
I hear
research?
folk say they feel sick in the morning, so they don't really want to eat it.
So
I'm actually one of those people.
Exactly, lots of people don't like to eat breakfast. But how soon can you eat something? Can you have it? Something at 11 o'clock if you're up at a decent time. Can you have something at 11 o'clock? Just eat something when you feel like it, and it can just be a cereal bar or a banana or just a yogurt, just something little. It doesn't have to be a big bowl of cereal or whatever. So make it easy. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Do you feel there's times when your services are more in demand? So, for example, say exam time.
Yeah. Particularly in semester 1, the demand just kind of rises as we go through, and particularly by about this time, that's when we're getting a lot of people, a lot of referrals coming in at once from GPs, and some of that is that people have had a very long semester, they're very tired, they've been working really hard, they may have been partying hard, they may not, but it's possible, and it's dark. Christmas is coming, there are all the stresses around Christmas, and thinking about, it isn't always wonderful, cosy family relations at Christmas. There are also financial demands, so there's a lot on people, as well as suddenly they're being asked to present all this work, but there are other things that goes on in people's life too.
What is it a lot of folk are presenting with, would you say?
Mood and anxiety disorders by that time of the semester. Although I have to say, we're getting more and more people, even before they come to university, referred now, which is a good thing. People who have got pre-existing mental health problems, and they're being referred by their mental health professionals in their own area before they come. So that's to try and stop transition dips or whatever, which is good.
Definitely.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we'll have to go to another song in a sec. But I do have one kind of thought, is that in striving to be the best, and you know, Dundee it prides itself on a lot of things. Do you feel that pressure kind of filters down? The lecturers feel it, and as you were saying with staff, like the kind of mood, you feel like that pressure it's an unhealthy kind of atmosphere for students, or
well, there's quite a lot in there.
Yeah.
The thinking about the staff, obviously I do work with staff as well, and the ones I see are usually quite ill, and I know that a lot of them do feel a lot of pressure because they want to do a really good job and they really do care often. Often that's behind it, they really do care and want to do a good job, which is great, but we have to manage that so that they don't become unhealthy. But you do have to remember I get a skewed view because I only see the people who are unwell. That's who I'm seeing. So I think that there is some pressure there, but some of that's self-generated. But I think from staff in themselves to do a good job. I would say I see here both sides, and the students do feel it if their tutors are under par or not performing, and that may be because they're unwell or whatever, but students are only here for a short time, so they've only got one shot at it, is often the way they feel it. So that's tying into what I said about having a community that's healthy and focusing on the whole thing. We need to have both sides, because if students are unwell, that has an impact on our staff and vice versa.
Fantastic. Something, food for thought right there. Would you like to introduce your next song?
Yep, so the next song I chose, quite different, is Over the Rainbow by Eva Cassidy.
Fantastic.
That I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow skies, a blue wind, the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, oh, way above the chimney tops, that's where you find me. roads are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, oh, way above the chimney tops, that's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. If happy little bluebirds fly above the rainbow wide, oh, why can't I?
And that was Eva Cassidy with Over the Rainbow, probably giving us a bit of hope to know that there is services there and there's something that people can hold on to.
Absolutely, and there's a bit of a personal slant in there too. I just thought it was such a touching story when you read about Eva Cassidy, and she died before she was famous, etc. And just that level of talent that she had, and it was just so sad. But yet it doesn't make me sad listening to it. It just touches a chord somewhere, as music does. I'm a great believer in music.
So was Tom Garnett was speaking about that, about music and whatnot. Yeah.
And that definitely touches a chord in me. So that was why I chose her.
Fantastic. Well, you touched on how you talked about basically how a lot of the students you see are presenting, say, mood disorders or anxiety disorders, as you've been saying. Has there been a change in what students present throughout your career, and do you know possibly why there's been this change, if there has been one?
Well, I can only kind of speak from my experience and trying to couple that up with the research, but we do know that there is quite a rise in anxiety related issues, and I certainly have seen that in the 15 years that I've been here. I think there are lots of reasons for that. We could get all sociological, but maybe best not. But I think society has definitely changed. We do things differently. Our family structures are different. We've got a 24-hour society, so the demands upon people are different. They're maybe not spending as much time in the same ways together as they used to. So that changes. Every action has a reaction. So that changes how we do things. And I worry a lot about trying to keep people engaged with other people in real terms. It's great having technology. I use it. I like it. I like social media. But I'm very conscious and quite concerned about the impact that that's having on how we communicate with each other when we're face to face. And I do see a lot of students who become quite isolated. Now, mental health difficulties can be isolating in themselves, so we mustn't forget that. But it can be quite easy to become disengaged with the real world when you use technology all the time. You can actually live your life without speaking to people nowadays. You can go to the supermarket, you don't have to speak to anyone, you go through the self-service tills, you can order things online, you don't have to go shopping, have your groceries delivered. You can just about do everything without having to speak to people. But then there comes a time, especially if you think about students or in employment, when you have to speak to people. So you have to go to tutorials, or you have to email your tutor or go to your doctor or whatever and speak to them. And if that's not an experience that you're used to having, that can be quite anxiety provoking. So that worries me. How do we keep people engaged? So when I hear about your activities, like doing your yoga, or there were some other ones you've spoken about as well.
We've got a speak out event, and we've also got an acoustic night coming up as well.
We're going to be making kites.
We made kites. Actually, we already did that. We did that last week. So
all these kind of activities, although they may seem fun, or kind of not necessarily high level, if you want, and that's not to undermine them.
Yeah.
But in a therapeutic sense, I think they are really therapeutic, and I think they're really important in keeping us well and functioning and developing our cognitive skills, problem solving skills, etc. Because problem solving is something that in my generation, we didn't have mobile phones until I was well in my teens. Well, not to specify how far in my teens. But so if we found ourselves out somewhere and in a problem and couldn't get home, we had to work out how to get home.
Yeah.
Whereas now, and I have teenage children, that doesn't happen. They just get their mobile phone out and they phone me, and I have to go and get them. But all that stuff means we're not necessarily developing problem solving skills in the same way, and that's not to say people don't have problem solving skills, but you're not getting exposure to risk in the same way. So all these things can potentially have an impact.
So in a way, we're not really learning as well how to look after ourselves, so to speak, when certain things arise.
I think the risks of that are higher anyway, not for everyone. I think
so even when you're touching on as well about like social media and whatnot, instead of say for like a symptom of depression feeling lonely, you actually are lonely because you are but just behind a screen, so to speak.
Yes.
So
yes, and that does worry me.
Yeah.
It does worry me because I think we are social beings and we do need to be with other people sometimes.
Exactly. I was just having this conversation with a friend actually. In the next Magdalene there will be an article on this by one of our writers, and it's on just the kind of straight up objectification that a lot of social media presents, but also the article has a lot more to do with the nice side, the kind of exception to the rule, which is behind the anonymity you can have very good acts, but a lot of the time it's being lost in this kind of milieu of just voices, and you just don't know who you are anymore. And I think also the amount of information that we get is incredible. It's just, if you look at how communication's changed from with the letter to the telegram to the email to right now with instant messaging, there's pressure, there's
massive,
incredible pressure, especially when someone sends you a message and they've seen that you've seen it and you might not answer. And a decade ago they would never have known if you even got it.
And the social rules have changed as a consequence of that. So things that my generation, it wouldn't upset me if I don't get any likes on something I posted on Facebook, but I know it would upset my 18-year-old daughter, because that means something different. We interpret that differently, and there's a massive pressure in that in terms of how people present themselves. There's a whole thing about branding themselves and all that kind of thing. We didn't have any of that pressure, and that's massive.
There's even a pressure just to like the technology respond immediately as well, so it's like you've got no time to think either as well. So, and then if it goes wrong, so to speak, and you respond the wrong way, this can have consequences too. And so a huge amount of pressure in so many ways.
Well, they reckon that cyberbullying is a huge problem in terms of young people's mental health. And what does cyberbullying look like? It's not always obvious. It's insidious. It's disguised, but it's powerful. And you don't know who's seen it. No. But it's lost on the internet as well. It's just so it can get everywhere basically. So no wonder people get anxious.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I guess what I want to kind of move on to now is more just your views on things to do with the current situation within our country itself, and current issues to do with mental health. So I've put this to Tom and Mike already. So what are your views on the current cuts that the Westminster government's making, and Scottish government as well, to mental health services? So, for example, in mental health services in the UK, there's been a cut of 80 million in the last 4 years, 35 million this year so far. What effect do you think this will have, and what are your views on the cuts?
Well, I think we're facing huge challenges anyway. Obviously, cutting budgets is just going to add to that. But with our ageing population and our otherwise expanding population, because there are other reasons our population's expanding, I think it's unlikely we can continue to deliver services in the same way. We have to get smarter. We have to look at that. But I think there are other reasons. I do think self-care has to come up the agenda, and I know it is doing, and sometimes people are quite cynical about that in terms of that's just to do it cheaply, and there may be a bit of that. I'm not here to sit and defend that, but I do think self-care is really, really important and is the way to go. I mean, part of the reason our health service is so burdened is because we are not looking after ourselves in the way that maybe people used to, and our expectations are quite high. And I do believe, and this might be controversial, that we need to perhaps try and look at the basics ourselves and look after ourselves. That's probably the best way we can help ourselves. And then, hopefully that will free up resources to be directed to when we really, really need them. Because I think I'm right in saying there's something like a quarter of the NHS budget is spent on things like diabetes, complications. And type 2 diabetes is largely preventable. So, that's a general analogy. But again, in mental health, I think there is work to be done. I think, for example, terminology has become really confused. So people don't know, when do I go and get help? When is this a normal response to a terrible situation? And do I need help for that, or do I need counselling help for that, or do I need to go and
or even the phrase mental health,
or go and be with people that I love, or I do think we'll have to be careful and not make everything medicalised, and every response we have has to be seen by a medical person, but we need to have medical or counselling or whoever professionals around for when we do need them. But I think that's getting muddled. So I think there are huge multifaceted challenges in that. I don't think it's just about money, but clearly we need a decent budget to address the significant challenges that we're facing that are changing all the time, as we've just spoken about.
Are there certain areas within the mental health sector that you feel are more neglected than others?
Well, I know they're putting a lot of money at the moment into child and adolescent mental health services. They have, in Scotland, put a lot of extra money into that. I know they're still being criticised for not putting in enough, although politically that could always be the case and could always be criticised. If you look at it, there are services, lots of specialised services out there that are doing a really good job, I have to say, because I liaise with them a lot. So, I'm not actually here to criticise any of them. I think they're all doing a good job. But it's about, my thing is about getting people to the right place, with the right person, at the right time, with the shortest possible journey. And I don't know if we're great at that yet. And if we get that wrong, that means you or I or you don't are visiting multiple people before we get to the right place. And that means that's cost 4 times what it's meant to. Never mind the personal cost. There's a big personal cost as well. So, and that's more what I'm interested in. Let's get people to the right place, the right time, with the right person, with the shortest possible number of steps.
Definitely. What do you feel are the issues that the mental health sector faces in the future, basically?
I think resilience is the big thing at the minute, and I agree with that. I think going back, tying in what I said about self-care, I think we have to try and improve our resilience as a nation, and all the things we've spoken about, terminological confusion, isolation, all these kind of things tie in with that. We have to try and build in resilience to our functioning, and society's got something to do with that as well. We're expecting people to work longer hours, have lots of uncertainty about their jobs, and 0 hours contracts and expectations, and that's all really bad in terms of building resilience in people, because they don't know if they're coming or going.
I think it's funny. I think I remember reading. I think we're the most worked nation in Europe,
Yeah.
Britain. But I saw yesterday on Facebook, which I thought was just really interesting. The Outer Hebrides has the people that live there have been found to be, I think, either the happiest in the UK or something like that. And they've got like an income of £15,000 a year, for example. So
Yeah.
and yet. You know, they've got a much bit higher quality of life, you could argue. So I just thought that was just really interesting, you know. And I thought, but I wasn't necessarily surprised either.
Exactly.
I think my perennial fear is that we
Yeah.
work so much, yet we're almost endorsed by the government to go and get drunk on the weekends. And to like vent through that way, which is just completely unhealthy, and not that, you know, a drink, I love it as well, I'm a majority, I can't deny it, but you know, it's not great to always turn your problems to just, I'll have a glass of wine. That's not.
It's about how you use it, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a multi-layered problem,
Yeah,
I think. And like everything else, it's changing all the time. That's the demand, isn't it? How do you know, the beast doesn't stay the same. It keeps changing. And
Yep.
you've got to keep responding to that, and every action has a reaction.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging.
On that, would you like to introduce your third song?
Yeah, now the next one, funny, we've just been talking about alcohol, is Amy Winehouse in Rehab, and I'll tell you a funny story about that afterwards.
They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, they try to make me go to rehab. I won't go, go, go. I'd rather be at home with Ray. I ain't got 17 days. 'Cause there's nothing you can teach me that I can't learn from Mr. Hathaway. I didn't get a lot in class, but I know it don't come in a shot glass. They try to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, just try to make me go to rehab. I won't go, go, go. The man said, why you think you hit? I said, I got no idea. I'm gonna lose my baby. So I always keep a bottle
Amy Winehouse with Rehab there. Poignant, very, very poignant song.
Absolutely, there's just so much in it, and it was just such a tragedy that we lost her. And when we're talking about mental health, obviously you look at Amy Winehouse and you think, what, you know, how sad, but such a wonderful, wonderful voice. But the funny story, and what I always think about when I hear that particular song, I've always been a big fan, and when my youngest son was just about 3 and I picked him up from nursery and going to the supermarket, as I did on the way back, he was walking, so he was, you know, the cashier couldn't see him, she didn't know he was there, she was just dealing with me, and just out of the blue, randomly, this little voice comes out of nowhere, Mama said we go to rehab, I said no, and the cashier just looked at me. We just looked at each other, and then he just shut up again. He never said any more, and it was just like we'd switched him on, switched him off, and she was like, "She's not really." So funny.
It's so cute.
So I always think of that when I hear Amy Winehouse, but I do think she's a wonderful, wonderful singer.
Music brings joy to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I just got a couple last more questions from people.
Sure.
One of them was, do you feel there's a difference in the gender of clients that come to seek your help?
Well, if you look at the statistics, I definitely see more female than male clients, which, again, if you look at wider research, that's not uncommon. Men still are finding it more difficult, perhaps, to engage or speak about mental health issues, emotional issues than females are. Although I think that's getting better. I would like to think it's getting better. But again, if you look at suicide rates, etc., the suicide rates for completed suicides are still much higher for males than females for completed suicides. So I think we've still got a bit of work to do on that one. Definitely.
Do you feel there's a difference in coping strategies?
Well, females are still more likely to be speaking to one another, and whereas, you know, males, I think, have a lot of pressure on them to just cope and get on with it, etc., etc.
I don't want this to be a massive generalisation, but even within myself, I think the male kind of psyche definitely works on they want a solution, and often now. And with this kind of thing, there's a lot of longevity to recovery. There isn't just a quick fix. There isn't it's not like it's not a mechanical problem. It's a very deep thing that will take a long time. So.
Yeah, and I think that's really quite difficult for men to come forward. And women sometimes too. We are generalising. And we need to be clear about that. Everyone's an individual, and I think that is really,
no, it isn't
really
always
important.
the case exactly, but there's a trend.
Looking
so
at the
to speak,
stats,
But actually, I might put a question to you both then. What do you think the reasons are behind this difference then? So why do you think men, say, generally cope a little different, or have different coping strategies, so to speak, than women?
Dom, you may be more qualified.
I don't know if I'm more qualified. I still think, in terms of just overt stigma, with men, I think there's some deep kind of things of, a lot of the time, man up, be a man, do this, be a man, don't never cry kind of thing. I think that it's not crying wolf when people say that happens a lot. And that could come from older generations down, in terms of even seeing parental figures, or even forefather figures just not crying if they're in pain or something. And I think that kind of, I need to be a man, and I think that plays a lot into not being able to open up. But more than that, I think there's why it may just be the way that men perceive problems, and not, I really don't want to generalize too much, but I think that I think that we deal with problems in a very different way. I mean, for example, with me and my partner Christina, we look at things in a completely different way, but culturally as well as just in terms of being male and female.
But do you think that's because it's a society rather than innate ways of looking at it?
I actually I think it's nurture. I mean, me and my twin brother, we are by nature exactly the same. We're identical in every single way, but our nurture and the way that we've dealt with things, and in what parts of society that have influenced us, is completely changed our personality in the way that we will deal with things. So on the outside, externally, we're completely different, but innate and internally, we deal with things in a very different way, and that's because of the experiences that we have on a day-to-day basis that changes the way that I perceive a problem and the way that he perceives a problem. And balancing. I think it's all about the balance. And I would like to say, and I often think that he's a bit more calmer than me and that he's got things in tow, but there are times when that's not true and that it's the reverse. So I think there's never gonna it's a sliding scale, but there's I definitely think it's nurture.
I agree with you. I think nurture has a massive influence on how we perceive things, interpret the world, etc., etc. What we learn from the time we're in our prams, etc. It shapes us. But I do wonder if there's a nature argument as well. There's more and more research coming out about brain structures, brain chemistries, etc., in terms of mental health difficulties and so on. So I think potentially there's a bit of both, and it'll be different in different people. I do wonder about the gender issue, just because I have boys and girls as children, and if you'd asked me this when I was your age, I would have said definitely societal, definitely nurture. But having had children who I believe to have brought up the same when they were little, maybe not, maybe I was influencing them, treating them different gender wise, but I have 2 boys and they weren't exactly the same either. So but generally females wanted to play with the dollies and the the girly things, and the boys wanted to play with the boy things. Not exclusively, they would swap over, but you could see, because I've been psychologically minded, paid attention to it, and did seem to think there was a bit of an innate preference. But again, we don't have an acid test for that, so it's just a matter of opinion.
I think the school system as well, and this is a huge tangent that is not for now, but
No,
I don't
no,
think the
go
school
ahead.
system in this country is healthy at all. I think that getting children through in batches and not fostering their creativity is the worst thing that we can do. And just thinking that it's point A to B and let's just get them through, I don't think that's...
And testing them so much from such a young age puts massive pressure on them in terms of performance all the time. It's all about performance.
I even felt it with myself, with like friends at school. Like, I'd give guys in my year, or even girls as well, that clearly were not wanting to be there because they had jobs lined up for them afterwards, and there was the only reason they were there was because by law they had to be. So and they'd play up because of that, and teachers would then not all teachers, no, at my school I really liked my school, I really enjoyed my school, but there would be times in frustration folk would get annoyed, or even folk in our class would say stuff to them to just get them to shut up or be quiet because they were wanting to do stuff, and you don't think necessarily sometimes what you say, how far reaching what you say can go. So definitely school could be improved, but
But it's not all about performance. And,
No.
I know that we're in an organisation where we want people to perform to their absolute optimum. Of course we do, that's why they're here. But we do also have to keep an eye on the person that's underneath all that, and sometimes that has to take precedence if someone's in a really poorly condition or whatever. We've got to set the other stuff aside temporarily and deal with that and really care about people.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a massive shift in the way that we perceive it though, because I would much prefer to be on the happiest campus in the world than the most economically performing. And if you look at what we're doing with, in terms of, if you took this as a corporation, the university, in comparison to something like Facebook or Google, we're not fostering enough space for people to be as content as they can be, or have the support systems there. The sad fact is, and we spoke off air about this, is that we have them there, but we're not being able to communicate them effectively.
I think that just to touch on the school thing again, I think, to be fair, we've got to give the school some credit in the sense that they're not doing nothing. I mean, even remember in my own schools we had learning support, and we had support through either our deputy heads, and and if anything issues came up with kids, with either their family or with themselves, our deputy heads, I can speak only from my own school, so I don't really know yourselves, but they were very good at supporting them and whatnot. The only thing maybe I could say is that I guess schools need to have more of a drive, my own and every others, from what I've talked to with other folk. There needs to be more lessons. You get your health lessons. There's health lessons on physical, keeping yourself well physically, and getting your 5 a day, and your sexual health really stuff as well. But I think I remember one lesson maybe once on mental health, but there's nothing that's continuous, so to speak, like there is with physical.
I had zero mental health
really
education in school.
And I think that touches on a really important point, though, is getting back to the link between physical and mental health. They're totally inextricable. They're tied so tightly up that we need to buy into that much more from the time they're tiny. And I did actually go out and do a session at my kids' high school for the seniors when the teachers asked me to go in and do it. And it was really interesting because I, went in with the whole idea of teaching people that it's not something mystical. It's not something that, if there's a problem you will have to run off and see somebody professional, because there is a risk that we think, we won't manage to improve ourselves unless we go and see someone. I think we have potentially perpetuated that wrongly, in my opinion, because when I see people, and everyone else too, what we're doing is enlivening people's own resources by and large. You might have medication and all the rest of it as well, but therapy is about using people's own resources, whatever the mode of therapy, whatever type of therapy. That's what you're doing. The bottom line is you're trying to empower people to feel that they can do things, they can get better, they can survive, and without that it's really it's really difficult. So I went into the school to try and communicate this message, and I have to say, although the young people seemed really interested, clearly asking questions was not going to happen. It was clearly an uncomfortable subject for them, and this idea that I can do something myself, that's the message that we're leaving you with. I think we need to beef that up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Self-care is paramount.
Empowering people is much better than disempowering them, in my book.
Always.
Okay, so I just got one final question just to finish off with, and I asked it of Mike as well. So what's your message to any students struggling with mental health, either with themselves or with caring for others?
Well, certainly with themselves, I'd be saying do something rather than do nothing. Definitely do something. So look at your basics, this sleeping and eating and alcohol, substance use, all those kind of things. Every little tweak that you can make in each of those areas, it doesn't have to be perfect. Every little tweak will make a positive difference. So it's like building a jigsaw. You're not going to get it all in one go. Do something, try those things, speak to people, and whoever that is. We actually have a raft of people across the organisation and in the NHS that you could go and speak to, and it doesn't necessarily mean it'll definitely lead on to therapy or whatever. It might not need to, but do it sooner rather than later. Why, if you isolate yourself and do nothing, there's a high risk that it might just continue to deteriorate. Not always, but there is quite a risk. So I would say, engage with people, do something.
And if you are listening to the podcast and you do want to come talk about any of this, I know that the Mental Health Society will always point people in the right direction, but also do so in Information Centre, the Hive, and also just have a quick look at the schedule of events that we've got, because these aren't just for these 2 weeks. This kind of Minds Matter that we're doing is continuous. So with Sports Union, if you want to get involved with the sport and you've never done it and you're kind of scared, come talk to us about it, and we'll point you in the right direction. We'll get people that will go along with you, because I know for myself it's much better to go climbing with a friend than on your own.
Definitely be with people. And there are, go back to the self-help, there are quite a lot of self-help things on programs on the web. So for example, livinglifetothefull.com, so you can just put living life into the full and it will come up. Is a great CBT based self-help program that you can.
Running that at the moment.
They're running a group version of it, but
the
NHS has endorsed it, and it's there on the web. If you want to look it up, you can actually register with it and go through it yourself. If you think you're having difficulties and you, for some reason, don't want to go to your GP, if you feel you're at a stage you can do that yourself, that's great. As you say, the counselling services are running a group version at the moment, as are various other organisations. Mood Juice is another one that's on the web that again is NHS endorsed, so it's all been checked, it's safe. So there are things, even if you feel, I'm not quite at that stage, I want to go and speak to someone yet, go on the web, do what you're used to, and see if you can. It's not for everyone, but a lot of people find that really helpful.
Just to mention also as well, the Mental Health Society, it's exec members, we if people are wanting to, so we've had it folk are wanting to approach, say, either the counselling service, the health service, whatever service, but maybe they've been too nervous or not quite sure, you know, we offer the service of where we're happy to go along with you to make your first appointment, or to go along with your first appointment, or even make it for you, so on your behalf, and then you go along yourself. So if that first step's too hard, you know what I mean, you know, there's someone there that can do it with you. Just so if there's ever a need for that, more than welcome to get in contact with us by our email, which you'll find on our Facebook or Twitter page, or even to message our page, because it's all private and anonymous too.
And we've done that, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
And it's probably just wise to say that, you know, if someone wants to do that but doesn't feel comfortable then opening up in front of someone else, then, you know, you've brought people before and then departed once they've engaged, etc. So, you know, it's all about individual solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. And do you have a final song to play us out?
Oh, which one will I choose? Well, I think I'll go with Michael Bublé and Feeling Good.
Good choice.
It's just
Here
wonderful.
we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Fiona.
you very much
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Bye-bye.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Fish in the sea, you know how I feel. The river running free, you know how I feel. Blossom on a tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when day is done, that's what I mean. And this whole world is a new world and a bold world for me. For me. You know how I feel. Scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Oh, freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I feel so good. I feel so good.